Hey there, hello, Sindre here. I teach a course that is called Project Cost Estimation and Risk Analysis. And in said course, there's a term paper that is pass-fail that you need to pass in order to do the exam. So I thought in this video I'll just give a quick example of what you could do in your term paper, and I chose a very simple example here made by myself. So let's just go through that. But first, let me just read to you the assignment description. It reads as follows. Apply all relevant and feasible methods from the course to a project of your own choosing. So I gave you an incredible amount of freedom here in terms of what project to choose. Choose whatever you want. You just need to argue to me that it is a project. And you also get a lot of freedom here in terms of which methods to apply. Now, of course, if you want to impress me, you apply many methods, as many as possible. If you have the life perspective, however, that you don't need to impress me, that you don't feel it matters, well, then you can choose a more narrow set of methods and tools and frameworks to apply. So my project in this example is going to be very silly and simple and minuscule, and that's going to be to change the diaper on a baby, like a 1 month here, 1 month old baby. So is that a project? Well, if you follow the letter of the law and look at the definition, well, it is an activity. It is temporary. We could argue that it's somehow unique, and we could kind of argue that there's some progressive elaboration. So by definition, it would be a project. But if you think about in a more the spirit of the law, then yeah, it's not really a project, but I just want to make it really small and minuscule to make a short video. So that is my project, change the diaper on a baby. So what methods am I going to apply to this silly project? I will be applying methods to get us through the first 3 phases of project budgeting. I will be applying methods to do resource planning, and methods to do cost estimation, and then methods to do cost budgeting, but I will leave out cost control for this example. And that is just the context for which I will be applying methods. So specifically, I will be using a subset of the 10 different methods from PM Book, that's Project Management Body of Knowledge, the industry's go-to source for best practice. So specifically, I'll be using the bottom-up approach, expert judgment, 3-point estimation, reserve, which specifically will be implemented using Monte Carlo simulation, and finally I'll be using project management software, which is just like implementation of the other methods with some software, and I will be using Excel. Okay, that's enough walking around the porridge. Let's just get to the carrot. So I'm going to start with resource planning, and I'm going to use the bottom-up approach. Specifically, I'm going to be developing a work breakdown structure. This is what my VBS ended up looking like. Now, obviously, there's an infinite amount of ways you could potentially make a VBS for any given project. You just need to make sure that the children of every parent node are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. Otherwise, the cost estimation later on is going to be incorrect. If you're wondering how I technically actually managed to draw the VBS, I was using LaTeX, and I used the TIX package, and here is the code. It's so straightforward and parsimonious that I don't think it requires any further explanation. Based on the work breakdown structure, we can see that I'm going to need resources such as a diaper, wet wipes, dry wipes, ointments or creams, saltwater drops, single-use underlay, plastic trash bag, and of course my own time and labor. Moving on to the cost estimation. For all of these resources, with the exception of labor, I take the price from the grocery store and I multiply it with an estimate of the fraction used. So for instance, the price of a 20-pack of diapers could for instance be 100 kroner. And I estimate that on average I use maybe 1.15 diapers per diaper change. Now, where does this 1.15 comes from? Well, that comes from me using expert judgment. Expert judgment is just the intuition of the person with the most experience available in the room at the time when you're making the estimate. And intuition here it can be regarded as a collection of heuristics and rules of thumbs that are created and modified as we accumulate tacit knowledge through experience. Expert judgment sounds kind of fancy, but what it really actually means is that I'm just using my gut feeling. So it is unfortunate, but at some point in your analysis, you will eventually have to just pull a number out of your hat without actually having any sort of justification behind it, other than just being your gut feeling. Labor is going to be the most expensive resource here, so I'm going to be a little bit more elaborate. I'm going to use expert judgment in combination with 3-point estimation. So for each of the work packages within the work breakdown structure, I come up with 3 estimates. The lowest amount of time I think it will take, the most likely, and the highest amount of time I think it will take. And then I take the weighted average in order to get the expectation, based on the PERT distribution, which is just a beta distribution in disguise, which of course is just a gamma distribution in disguise. Summing up the seconds, we get 20 minutes, that's 1/3 of an hour. So if we multiply with my hourly wage of 350 kroner, that's after tax by the way, then we end up with 118 kroner. We also need to add on the cost of the single-use items that we calculated previously that didn't actually show the number, but just rounding up here to get a nice number. It's going to be about 30 kroner. So the total cost of this project is 150 kroner. Final answer. I then move on to the final stage that I want to cover, which is cost budgeting. I take all of the work packages from the work breakdown structure and I create a dependency table. And then based on the dependency table, I create a network diagram, which will tell me when the cost will occur. And by the way, here's the LaTeX code for how I made the network diagram. And once again, it's so straightforward that I think that you can figure out it on your own. One final thing to say here is that a point estimate, which in our case is 150 kroner, is seldomly sufficient in order to do decision making. We also want to know the inherent uncertainty of that point estimate. In other words, we want to find a probability density function surrounding the number. And to do that, we can use Monte Carlo simulation. Based on the Monte Carlo simulation, we will get a histogram, and based on that, I want to find the standard deviation and add that back into the point estimate so we can do like a reserve analysis in addition. I did the Monte Carlo simulation in Excel. Specifically, I used Visual Basic Application, VBA, that's the programming language of Excel. And here is the code, and it kind of goes without saying, I think you get it. So based on this script here, I simulated 1,000 or 10,000 different pseudorandom number from a PERT distribution for each of the different activities. And based on that, I can calculate the histogram and standard deviation here, summary statistics. And specifically, we get a standard deviation here of 224.79 seconds. So if I incorporate that into the point estimate, then we get a reserve of 22 kroner. And if we add that to our initial point estimate of 150, we get a final point estimate of 172 kroner. And that's it for my term paper.